when you try to track ongoing high-profile investigations, it often feels like you're piecing together a puzzle in the dark.
Absolutely.
The flow of information is never clean. It's filtered, it's often contradictory, and it's all subject to the narrative goals of multiple parties, police, defense, everyone.
It creates this tremendous informational fog. The critical, objective facts are typically locked away in a laboratory somewhere.
Right.
Meanwhile, the public-facing details, the leaks, the official statements, the contradictions, they're all being used strategically by those involved.
That fog is exactly what we're diving into today. We are focusing on the tragic and very serious case surrounding the death of 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez.
And the investigation that involves the musician D4VD, whose given name is David Anthony Burke.
So our mission for this deep dive is pretty straightforward.
We want to act as your guides through the sources here. We need to distill the latest and, like we said, often clashing information about where this investigation stands.
Specifically, focusing on the cooperation level of the identified suspect.
And the critical forensic reports that are currently holding up any major developments in the case.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, at the discovery phase. This case, it just exploded into the public eye back in September of 2025.
Right.
Celeste Rivas Hernandez's body was found on September 8th. And poignantly, that was just one day after her 15th birthday.
And the discovery itself was just so grim. It was made in the trunk of D4VD's impounded Tesla.
And this wasn't a fresh crime scene discovery. I think that's a key point.
Not at all. The sources indicate the car itself had been abandoned in the Hollywood Hills for, about a month?
A month.
It was actually neighbors who finally reported a persistent foul odor coming into the vehicle, and that's what prompted the police to respond.
That timeline is so critical, the car being abandoned for a month. Okay, so let's unpack what we know about the victim and the immediate severity of what the officers found.
Well, what we know from documents reviewed by the Los Angeles Times is that Celeste Rivas Hernandez had a history of being missing.
Okay.
She had been reported missing from Lake Elsinore, California, at least 3 times over the course of 2024 alone.
And when the police opened that trunk, I mean, the investigation must have immediately jumped to the highest level of priority.
Oh, without a doubt. The manner of discovery seems to have dictated everything that came after. The sources are explicit that it's being treated as a homicide probe from the very moment of discovery.
And the details are sobering.
Very. The body was found decomposing, and it was placed inside a plastic bag. An LAPD captain estimated that Rivas had been dead for, quote, several weeks prior to her body being discovered.
So a decomposing body, concealed in a plastic bag, abandoned a vehicle. I mean, that combination, it sounds like it just overrides any initial thought of this being a natural death or an accident.
It carries massive weight. And that's a fascinating point. Law enforcement doesn't need a medical examiner's report to classify a death as suspicious or, to initiate a homicide investigation.
The circumstances are enough.
The simple fact that the body was concealed in a bag, put in a trunk, and then abandoned, that strongly suggests an attempt to hide evidence.
Intentional criminality.
That's the term. The circumstances of the discovery provide that initial corpus delicti, the evidence that a crime has been committed, even if the definitive cause of death, the how, is still a total unknown.
So they're operating under the premise of a worst-case scenario homicide until the science can definitively prove otherwise. Which seems, prudent.
Precisely. And the state of decomposition, that just reinforces how difficult the perpetrator had it in covering their tracks and, the length of time they may have had.
That really sets the stage for what became the core conflict in the public narrative almost immediately.
The suspect's response.
Exactly. Let's pivot now to this huge contradiction in the cooperation status involving D4VD.
This is where the public facts just diverge so sharply. It's a legal and public relations tug of war.
So on one side, we have the latest report from a police source. This person spoke exclusively to People magazine. And this source states unequivocally that D4VD is not cooperating with investigators.
And crucially, has not cooperated from the very beginning.
And they went even further than that.
They did. That source emphasized a major legal hurdle. The police have, as of the reporting, not yet interviewed the singer.
Not interviewed him.
Which suggests a pretty deliberate firewall between the suspect and the investigators.
But wait a minute, that directly clashes with the message coming from the defense team earlier. What did his reps claim?
Well, earlier in the process, D4VD's representative told NBC Los Angeles that their client was fully cooperating with authorities.
So you have a direct, non-negotiable conflict.
Zero cooperation and no interview, according to the police.
Versus fully cooperating, according to the defense. So let's get into the so what of this. I mean, if police identify someone as a suspect in a homicide probe, especially when the body is found in their car and they haven't been interviewed, how can the defense possibly claim full cooperation? What is the legal game here?
Well, this really highlights the difference between, let's call it, PR cooperation and actual legal cooperation.
Okay.
For the defense, fully cooperating can often mean they're just meeting mandatory legal obligations.
So like complying with search warrants.
Complying with search warrants, maybe providing access to non-testimonial evidence, adhering to procedural stuff. It might be handing over phone data, for example.
But refusing the most crucial element, which is the client's direct statement.
Exactly. For the defense, protecting the client means controlling the narrative. And the number one way to do that is controlling the flow of information. The right not to be interviewed, invoking the Fifth Amendment, is fundamental.
So by refusing a sit-down interview, they are legally protecting their client.
Which is their job. But from the police perspective, if you aren't talking, you are not cooperating. The two definitions are, in practice, mutually exclusive.
So the police source leaking this not cooperating claim, that feels like a calculated pressure tactic. They're basically telling the public, this person is stonewalling our investigation.
Precisely. It creates a powerful public narrative that suggests evasion. In a case this high profile, police often use public pressure to encourage the suspect, or maybe people around them, to talk.
And meanwhile, the defense uses the fully cooperating line to manage public perception.
Yes, to maintain their client's image of transparency, even while advising him to exercise his constitutional right to silence. It's a very smart legal maneuver, regardless of the ethical optics.
So the cooperation status is really a PR battle. But no matter who is talking, the entire investigation seems to be hung up on one major bottleneck.
The science.
The pending forensic reports.
That is the immovable fact. D4VD remains a suspect. But without hard scientific data, the path to charges or an arrest is effectively blocked. The investigation is just suspended in this operational limbo.
And what are the specific reports that are holding everything up? It's the medical examiner's determination, right?
That's it. The entire case hinges on the Los Angeles medical examiner's final cause of death determination. And critically, the toxicology report.
And right now, the cause and manner of death are listed as deferred.
Correct.
For anyone unfamiliar with that term, what does deferred status actually mean in an investigation like this?
Deferred basically means the forensic pathologist has done the physical autopsy, but couldn't determine the cause of death from that alone.
So they need more lab work.
They need the lab work to finish the job. In a case with advanced decomposition, the body's condition can obscure clear signs of trauma.
Things like bullet wounds, stab wounds.
Right. Any clear physical injury might be really difficult to detect or even to differentiate from just post-mortem changes.
So if there's no clear trauma, toxicology becomes everything. They have to know if drugs or poisons were involved.
Absolutely. Yeah. Toxicology is essential here. They have to rule out or confirm chemical causes of death. If there's no obvious violence, the answer might be in an accidental overdose, or a deliberate poisoning, or something else entirely.
And until they have that data, the legal status stays ambiguous.
Which is why the police source admitted investigators are still trying to determine if her death was a murder or something else.
That something else could legally mean the crime shifts from homicide to, say, illegal disposal of a body.
Exactly. A very different charge.
And this ambiguity, it seems to have complicated the timeline as well. We first heard several weeks, but have they narrowed that down at all?
Only slightly. The sources shared that, quote, springtime is the closest we've come to determining the time of her death, not before then.
So that still leaves this multi-month window, March, maybe April, all the way up until September.
And determining a precise date of death in a case with this level of decomposition is just extremely challenging. It makes it so much harder to establish alibis or a chain of custody.
That delayed timeline and the condition of the body, it all brings us to the final and maybe the most disturbing element from the sources.
The allegations about how the body was handled.
And the involvement of potential accomplices.
Right. This part could widen the scope of the investigation way beyond a single suspect in a single moment. A separate police source alleged that the perpetrator most likely had help dismembering and disposing of the body.
That is an incredibly specific and horrifying detail. So police sources believe D4VD had helped dismembering and disposing of the body.
That is the core allegation that's being floated by sources close to the investigation.
And if that's true,
If it's true, it suggests a premeditated collaborative effort to destroy or hide evidence. I mean, dismemberment is generally associated with efforts to make a body easier to transport or to make identification much, much more difficult for forensics.
and we know this theory aligns with physical steps investigators took early on. They weren't just focused on the car.
Correct. Back in September, investigators served a search warrant at a Hollywood Hills home where the singer had reportedly been staying.
Which suggests they were looking for evidence related not just to the death, but to the storage and handling of the body.
Exactly.
So let's connect these dots for a minute. We have a suspected death sometime in the spring, a body concealed and abandoned for a month, allegations of dismemberment and an accomplice, and a search warrant at a residence. How does all this guide the investigators?
Well, it shifts their focus from just solving a death to unraveling a potential conspiracy. If the death happened in the spring and the body wasn't found until September, that suggests a really prolonged phase of concealment and possible planning.
The alleged dismemberment, the bag, the abandoned car, it all points to a multi-step plan.
A concerted plan to obscure forensic identification and just physically dispose of the remains.
Yeah. Which means they're likely building a case not just around the potential primary crime homicide, but also around post-mortem crimes.
Like accessory after the fact or concealing evidence. And those require proving a separate intent.
And the complexity just multiplies from there.
Absolutely. Because now they need to link the suspect to the primary crime and potentially link accomplices to the secondary crimes of disposal. It just expands the number of potential defendants and charges exponentially.
This deep dive really reveals just how many moving parts there are in a case like this, especially when the core scientific facts are still missing.
It really highlights the reality of an investigation. I mean, the cooperation battles, the accomplice theories, they're important, but they're all speculative until the medical examiner delivers those definitive results.
Okay, let's wrap up with the 3 key takeaways we've distilled for you from this collection of sources.
First,
the suspect's cooperation status. It remains the major public contradiction. Police sources say he hasn't been interviewed and is not cooperating. His reps previously said he was fully cooperating.
and that difference is most likely rooted in legal strategy versus public relations.
Second, the forward progress of the entire case is fundamentally blocked by those pending medical examiner reports.
Until the LA medical examiner moves the cause of death from deferred and gives them the toxicology results, police can't really solidify any charges related to the primary crime.
And finally, police sources have introduced that extremely serious allegation that the perpetrator most likely had helped dismembering and disposing of the body.
Which expands the scope to potential accessory or concealment charges and explains those search warrants.
So here is the thought we want to leave you with to mull over.
Consider the pressure exerted by that one single word, deferred. In cases like this where circumstantial evidence is strong, I mean, the body is in the car, but direct evidence of the cause of death has been destroyed by time and concealment.
The medical examiner's lab effectively holds the keys to the courthouse.
It does. And without that scientific certainty, all the compelling circumstantial evidence, all the theories about accomplices, and all the public pressure, it all remains insufficient to transform an active investigation into a formal prosecution.
We appreciate you taking this deep dive with us into these challenging details. We'll be here to track the facts as they finally emerge.